Happy New Year. Coming up on One Detroit, I'll go one-on-one with Detroit School Superintendent Dr. Nikolai Vitti on new curriculum, training teachers, and what student success really looks like. Plus, Stephen Henderson tours Goodwill Industries with Dan Varner. They'll debate how to close the skills gap. Also coming up, Nolan Finley gives us an inside look at the new development at the corner, what makes it so different from other residential builds, and the message behind a mural. I'm Christy McDonald. One Detroit is coming up.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Maryland cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
I have a question. Who wants to go first? To win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.
Hi, and welcome to One Detroit. I'm Christy McDonald. Happy New Year! It's a good start to 2019, so let's get going with some of the best conversations we've had on One Detroit. Coming up, we'll talk to Detroit Schools head Nikolai Vitti on curriculum changes, an opportunity for all children to have success. Plus, Stephen Henderson tours Goodwill Industries and the job training programs to match people with work. Also, we'll head down to the corner development in Corktown with Nolan Finley. Eric Larsen will show him a new way of constructing housing. And we'll end with a Detroit artist and the smiles you might have seen around the city. It is all coming up for you on One Detroit. But let's get started with my conversation with Detroit Schools head Dr. Vitti. I spent some time with him just before the school year started, and he walked me through the new curriculum they're using in reading and in math. And he talked about the expectations for success, what that really means for students, and how Michigan needs to balance how all kids are taught.
I see the data, I hear what the principal said, now I get to see it.
We're here with some teacher training and the teacher in service, and they're getting their classrooms ready. What are some of them saying to you about their readiness for the beginning of the year, and do they feel that they have the tools to be able to succeed with these kids?
I think, when you look at where we are from a resource point of view, we can always go deeper and broader at greater scale to meet the needs of our children. But anecdotally, what I'm hearing from teachers is that for the first time, they feel like the district is proactively trying to provide them with better tools to be successful in the classroom.
Let's talk a little bit about the teacher training this summer and the change the district made with the curriculum. Why was it necessary to even change your K-8 curriculum in math and in literacy?
Well, we did a curriculum audit in literacy and math at the K-8 level, and that audit clearly indicated that the materials that are used in the class, what we call curriculum, was woefully below grade level expectations.
And when you saw that audit, did you say, wait a minute, how long have they been operating this way, and why did we continue to do that?
Yeah, I sensed that in the interview process. I was starting to do my research and looked at materials they were using. Even in the interview process, I was able to visit schools and look at the materials. And so just based on my background and experience, I could tell that the materials were outdated, but our audit allowed for an independent review so it didn't look personal or political. And it revealed what I thought, which was the curriculum was below grade level. And so what that meant was that when teachers, for example, were teaching the 5th grade curriculum, and the state says that students need to have a certain understanding based on 5th grade standards, our teachers and students were automatically at a disadvantage.
Talk to me specifically about some of the changes that we're going to see in literacy and just different ways they're going to be teaching kids.
So, I think we can all go back to middle school, even elementary school, where we learned with those big, bulky anthologies, where we read excerpts of stories. And sometimes I remember as a student, well, I want to learn more about that, or why am I just reading excerpt, or why am I reading about one thing this day and it's something else the other day? We're going back to novels. So students will actually get a hard copy novel and read books front to back. In our classrooms, we're going to do more writing. talking about do you agree or disagree with what the author was talking about. We're going to compare a book to a poem where you can compare and contrast that work. There will be more Socratic circles, more discussion of text. So students can apply what they're learning, synthesize what they're learning, analyze what they're learning, rather than just doing bubble type of answers. We're moving to a model where students will finally understand the concepts of math. So too often we teach math formulaically, which is just memorize the right answer because it's the right answer.
Right.
And that's why a lot of our students are disengaged when it comes to math. They don't understand the mechanics of math or the thinking behind the math. So this is why our country, I think, especially struggles with creating engineers, and why we are outsourcing, if you would, other countries to bring in that talent. And so a lot of that has to do with how children are not taught math appropriately. So with this new curriculum, they'll start to understand math conceptually, not just memorizing math.
And how does this fit into master teaching and the fact that you're trying to have master teachers come in and help some of the teachers along the way and get them more integrated to what you're doing?
Yeah, the feedback at the beginning of the year, or last year when I started, was a lot of our teachers were starting to feel burnt out professionally, meaning they've been in the classroom for a while, they love teaching, they love being with the kids, but professionally they didn't know what the next step was. So what we thought of is creating a master teacher role where the master teachers would be selected through a rigorous process with the district and principals. And once selected, they would teach part of the day, and then the other part of the day they would go into classrooms, mainly new teachers or struggling teachers, model lessons, facilitate professional development, help with lesson plan development. And this way, I think it's a strategy to retain some of our higher performing veteran teachers.
Mm-hmm. I would think that somewhere along the line, the teachers say, okay, now we've got a new curriculum, that it's aligned more with the state Common Core standards. I'm eventually going to be graded on how well my students do
That's right.
here. So give me a little bit of a big picture look and how long you expect to see possibly some kind of change in the test scores, because that's really what the district is being held up to at this
I
point.
think at the end of this year, we're going to see improvement with the percentage of students that are performing at or above grade level. I think that's going to happen district-wide and really look different at individual schools where fidelity of implementation is high. So I think that's just initially this first year. The second year of implementation is, I think, where we're going to see even more improvement, because now you get you are able to iron out the kinks from the first year implementation, and you're really starting to better understand the curriculum the second year. And that's why I've been saying in about 3 to 4 years then, we're going to start to see improvement nationally on the National Assessment for Educational Progress, especially for this year's first graders, because they had been exposed to better curriculum starting in first grade, even a little bit last year with some of the diagnostic work we did in reading. And I think when they become fourth graders and they take that national assessment, I think we're going to see definitely improvement nationally as far as national assessment scores are concerned.
You've talked a lot about equity in schools and how across the state you have very different districts operating in very different ways, and until everyone understands that every child deserves to have a quality education, we're not going to get very far. Do you feel that that message of equity in our schools, especially here in the state of Michigan, has started to resonate with people?
No. I think it's an issue that's clearly understood by Detroiters because they live the reality of inequity every day. But it isn't resonating statewide. I think the fear that we have in this country and in the state of Michigan, that it's always a conversation about, well, if you give more here, you're taking away somewhere else. And that is a zero-sum game. And we have to think beyond that, where we look at every individual child, and what is equal is not equitable. What is equitable is giving a child an equal opportunity for academic and civic success. And that happens through the traditional public education system. So a child in Birmingham may need X, but a child in Detroit who's facing poverty may need Y. And what we should be talking about nationally in the state of Michigan is, how does a child in Birmingham and Detroit have equal opportunity for academic and civic success through the traditional public school system? We haven't figured that out yet on the national level and the Michigan level, and until we do that, we're going to continue to find children that fall behind because they're just not given the resources to compete with a child who is growing up in a more middle class background and home where privilege provides them opportunity.
One of the important things we consider when educating our kids is preparing them for careers of the future. Not everyone can afford college, and not everyone has the ability to get a 4-year degree. And there are skilled trades jobs that are available if people can get the right training. Stephen Henderson headed out to Goodwill Industries to meet up with CEO Dan Varner for a look at what's being done to attract and train more Detroit workers.
Say Goodwill to most people, and they think of the place where they drop old clothes or old furniture they don't need. But Dan Varner, Goodwill CEO, explains that the organization is so much more. It's on the front lines of the push to get more Detroiters ready for work, and they prepare between 9,000 and 10,000 people a year to enter the job market.
So of course we do run the iconic thrift stores, which come out of Reverend Edgar Helms' work in Boston years and years and years ago, well over 100 years ago now, that created the thrift store model. But we also, here at Goodwill Industries of Greater Detroit, we're a Tier 1 auto supplier. We run a light assembly and kitting business that serves all of the major manufacturers. And we also run a wholly owned subsidiary called Goodwill's Greenworks that does industrial recycling and asset recovery work for DTE Energy and a bunch of other local companies. So when there's a thunderstorm and the wires come down, we actually take those wires, and if they can be reused, we prepare them for reuse, and if not, we strip them down to their component parts and sell those on the commodity market for DTE.
And the work that Goodwill does is complicated by the real deficits that people bring with them to job training. Goodwill does a lot of work with both returning citizens, those who've been to jail and are coming home, and those who are sent to Goodwill to get training and a job rather than go serve time behind bars. Their challenges are staggering.
I don't know your story, Antonio. How long have you been here?
2013, actually November will be 5 years.
Yeah, is that right? Well, congratulations.
Wow.
Yeah. So we
And how
test
did you find
everybody
us?
who we serve, and most of these young men and women are reading at a 4th or 5th grade level and doing math at a 3rd or 4th grade level. And that's kind of regardless of what their actual credential may be. Some of them may have actually graduated from high school, but still are performing at that level. And that's kind of our typical educational attainment level for folks. 99% of them are unbanked, don't have a bank account, never have had a bank account, are not employed. Most of them are homeless or near homeless, so they're literally couch surfing or living out of a car if they happen to have one. Speaking of cars, most of them don't actually have access to a car, much less actually drive one. We're talking about 30% or so max with access to a car or actually driving one. Many we're happily getting these resolved now, but with driver responsibility fees and the like, if they did have a license, so that license has been suspended. And the list goes on, like real fundamental challenges to actually getting into the world of work.
Varner is certain about the ways in which the deficits he sees at Goodwill were developed.
I sort of want you to think a little bit about the relationship between the work you're doing now with the population you're serving now and the work that you used to do as part of Excellent Schools Detroit, trying to make sure that kids in this city get the educational opportunities that they're supposed to. In my mind, they're not unrelated. This is sort of two ends of the same spectrum.
That's exactly right. I actually tell, when folks say, well, how did you end up at Goodwill? Because my background, I'm an attorney, but my work background really is youth development and then this education policy work. And they say, well, Goodwill, that doesn't really make sense. And I say, no, it's exactly the same. I've been working with the same group of people, for 20 years. I just followed them from childhood to young adulthood. And the work is very similar. We do education work, and personal development work is a big part of the work that we're doing with the populations that we serve. So it is very similar work. And of course, maybe most plainly, we serve many folks who our education system failed. And when I say our
You're
education,
picking up the slack for
that's
something
right.
that wasn't done before.
That's right.
Varner is sure about who's to blame for those failures.
I blame all of us for the failure of our education system collectively. It is a public responsibility. And every person who is watching this show right now, and both of us, are all equally responsible for the mess that we've made of our public education system in the state.
And he is just as sure about the mistakes we have made.
When the state lifted the cap on charter schools, my issue actually with that in hindsight is not that the cap was lifted. It was that it was done so without regard to quality, without regard to performance. We had an opportunity in that moment to actually raise the bar on the performance of our charter schools which I think in turn would have raised the bar for the performance of all of our schools.
The public schools as well, right?
And I think that was a huge miss. Not only because we failed to take advantage of that, but then we did the exact opposite, right? And in many respects, actually kind of created this free-for-all situation that has left most schools under-enrolled and so under-financed and far too many seats than we need and so on. Kind of just a structural, systemic mess that every school, every teacher, every parent, and every student suffers from. So that's one. There's something around what happened to the city's recreation department in the kind of 80s and 90s that continues to, I think, be a real problem for us as a city.
Talk about filling skilled jobs that are available. There are a lot of construction projects happening in Detroit. One of them is at the Corner development in Corktown. Nolan Finley spent some time with Eric Larsen, the CEO of the Downtown Detroit Partnership, who's also the developer of this $30 million project. You'll see why its structure is pretty unique, out of technology, but also because of the construction workforce.
Eric, you've called this the Corner because this was always the corner when the Tigers played here and when Tiger Stadium sat on this site. Tell us what you're doing here.
Yeah, well, you know, often, Nolan, we've talked about this over the years. It's better to be lucky than good, and being on this hallowed ground is pretty special, and having the opportunity to sort of repurpose what has been a community asset for so many years. I mean, 100 years they played, and it wasn't just the Tigers, it was the Lions. It was a lot of great concerts. Nelson Mandela said his speech here. So what we're doing is we're framing the field. So PAL has restored the original ballpark.
The Police Athletic League's on the ball field right next to us.
And what we're doing here on the corner is building 111 apartment units on top of 26,000 square feet of retail at that historic corner of Michigan and Trumbull.
When you talk about sitting in a catbird seat, I mean, you really did fall into it. You started this project, planned this project, well before you knew Ford Motor Company was going to be moving into Corktown, just down the street in the old Michigan Central Depot, and bringing all those workers and all that economic activity here. This is the place to be in Detroit right now.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, Corktown is on fire, and being part of that has been very exciting. I mean, the sad thing is I look back and I've been working on this project for 5 years. So yes, we were here and thinking and contemplating what we could do with this site long before Corktown, quite frankly, long before Tony Suave started his project across the street.
Across the street. Everywhere you look here, something's going on, something's being built. But we wanted to talk to you, particularly today, about the way you're building this project. This is the first prefab apartment unit or complex of any kind in the city of Detroit. These units you see sitting here, they were all built off-site by Champion Homes of Troy, Michigan, a Michigan company, built in a factory, shipped here.
Trucked here.
Trucked here.
Yeah.
Is this just a fancy trailer park, Eric?
Oh, don't go there, Nolan. Yeah, I love you too much for you to go there. We're trying to get away from that stigma, but no, basically it is exactly what manufactured housing has been using for decades. And so it's not necessarily new technology. The systems and the process and the overall sort of streamlining of the building has improved, obviously, over time. The materials have improved. But what we're building is actually a modular unit that is fully finished.
This technology, this prefab technology, has really evolved. I mean, the first house I owned had wheels under it, and now we're seeing basically these might fall into the category of luxury apartments being built in a factory. We've seen prefab communities and resort communities and other places. What made you think it would work as a low-rise apartment complex?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nolan, because this product has been used quite often in the hospitality world. Lots of hotels have been doing it, but as the technology and the ability to build this kind of product has evolved, you now can stack it. They started stacking them 2 high, then 3 high. Now, this is going to be 4 high, but you can continue to build up, which ultimately allows you to create a low to mid-rise building with this technology, which you really weren't sort of focused on doing in the past. It's not so much the evolution of the product, to your point, it arrives on wheels. We just take the wheels off and now have the ability to stack them in the air. So you think about how relevant this is with Detroit and Henry Ford. I mean, this is the same production line. And so these houses go down the line, and each station has a specialist. So at one point they're doing the plumbing, one point they're doing the electric, one point they're doing the drywall, one point they're doing the painting. And so it comes off the line, it goes on a trailer, it's trucked here, we store them on a site down on River Rouge on the river, and then they are trucked here.
But I mean, you can see it's painted, outlets are in, carpets in.
And they come with all the flooring, all of the appliances. Yeah. Once they're stacked, the connections are made on site. So there's corridors and all of the connections. So all the wiring and plumbing that's already in these units get connected in, and then we skin the building, the outside of the building, and basically it's done. I mean, that's a little simplified, but
cuts down on the amount of time you need an electrician on site or a plumber on site. All the interior work's been done. You just need connection.
It's the fact that you're building the stuff that goes in the air and the base at the same time. That's where your speed comes. You can actually be building the podium that it sits on at the same time you're building this product. You put them both together and it speeds it up.
You know, for a long time, Eric, people really had a view of prefab housing that wasn't very flattering. I mean, we joked about the trailer park at the start of the interview. Has the image changed?
I think the image is changing, and I think projects like this help the image change. And I think the more product like this, the more that people can get out and actually touch and feel the quality of this product, the more people will believe that this is actually an option. It's not, you know, the end-all be-all, but it is an option to traditional construction.
The other reason for doing this process is the shortage of skilled workers in this region. You need fewer of those skilled workers for a shorter amount of time.
That's correct. And this is a product that, quite frankly, helps sort of bridge that gap. So as we're continuing to really put people to work and train people to get back to work, we also have the ability to deliver to the demand.
Do you expect this construction method to become more common in Detroit?
I hope so. It just is an efficient way to build. It's not for every project, but it's a very efficient way to build.
Well, Eric Larsen, we appreciate you showing us around the corner and giving us a look at what's going on the side of the old Tiger Stadium. Thanks.
Wow, it's an honor. Thank you. Thank you, Nolan.
And finally, a look at the murals in the market. It's an international festival held at Eastern Market in Detroit and really a way to connect our community to art. There's so many artists gathered for the 10-day event, so meet one of them, Phil Simpson. You may have seen his signature smiling faces around the city.
When I first started, I started painting smiles over vacant houses just to cover up some of the negative cuss words. Just want people to, you want to walk past something that's encouraging. In general, man, murals are influencers to the neighborhood. When you add a mural in the neighborhood actually had input on it, they had feedback, they feel connected to the mural now. So I'm born and raised on the east side of Detroit, and it's considered one of the worst, well, on paper, let's say that. My friends and I don't ever want that to be the narrative for where we come from, so we do a lot of work in the community. The mural I did on Milwaukee and Hastings, what made it a favorite is that on Hastings Street, my granddad used to live in that neighborhood before the freeway was built. He was the first person I took to see the mural when it got done. Some people find what they love in their 20s. I've been doing this since like 10, you know? Art has always been my thing. And now I'm finding a way to provide for my family with art. So now it's like, it's really my life now. We're gonna have a lot of flesh color faces, but we're also gonna keep it authentic to like my true style of just doing like green faces, orange faces, just all around to represent humanity in general, smiling together. Our passion is different. I mean, not different, but it's not a traditional passion. We don't have an everyday paycheck. And then when they click, or when you do make it, or when you start getting invoices, and that makes it better. But I think most of us that do this with no money because we love doing it, you know? To all the parents out there, keep your kids' drawings. My mother did a great job encouraging my art, but also keeping all of my old sketches. I can go back 26 years to find my earliest drawing. It lets me know I came a long way. So this is definitely just the beginning of my mural journey these first 3 years. You're gonna see some more smiles around the world. That's the goal, to spread smiles and joy through other inner cities where it'll have a bigger impact on the youth. I waited for this day, you know, in the city of Detroit as an artist, to be invited to do this. You got a little kid from the east side of Detroit painting smiles, and I don't think it could get any better than that. You know, dreams come true for real.
And that'll do it for One Detroit. Thanks so much for joining me. Make sure you come back next Thursday. I'll be here along with Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson. And make sure you find us on Facebook and Twitter. We're there as well. Tell us what stories you'd like to see on One Detroit this year. We would love to hear from you. I'm Christy McDonald. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Murals cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
I have a question. Who wants to go first to win? Who wants to grow our business? Who wants to make more money? Who wants more job opportunities? If you want Michigan to compete and become a top 10 state, raise your hand. Together, we've turned Michigan around and started moving forward. Now help us build a stronger Michigan than ever. Raise your hand at strongermichigan.com.
Support also provided by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Detroit Journalism Engagement Fund, and the Bill and Shirley Fox Fund for Leadership and Public Affairs Programming at Detroit Public TV.